Hello, back with another social anxiety, um, social media anxiety video where I am looking online, of course, for videos on how to work on my anxiety over social media. And I fully expect that this will kind of extend to other parts of my life, but that's the main focus. This is sort of a sub shoot off from my no ums, no ahs video, where I'm working on my vocal presentation. I'm working on structural stuff on like how to do presentations better. But I figured another way to get to work on this because strangely enough, some of the vocal guys are just like, look, the biggest thing you can do is relax. And I think about a lot of the beliefs and a lot of just the anxieties, the beliefs behind a lot of the anxiety I get from doing a lot of things, any creative endeavor, and that's probably something I need to work on. So, thus, that this is an offshoot of me trying to work on anxieties in general. I've seemed to have settled on, at least for the first stretch here, on some cognitive behavior therapy videos. This one coming from Brbr Hffrnn. I think that's who I used this the last time. She seems fairly straightforward, not too silly. Seems to have fairly kind of, grounded. I'm always looking for sort of fairly grounded, concrete videos on, okay, you've got this issue. Here's some thoughts. This video is called Cognitive Reframing, bracket, and one life hack to reduce suffering, which everybody, I forgive everybody their titles. I understand that you have to make a snappy, kind of hookbaity title to get people to click on stuff. That's just the way it goes, and that don't reg that so that the cognitive reframing would be the very dry thing, but the and one life hack to reduce suffering is the let's try and actually get people to actually watch my video. So there's that. So she does start off by saying, look, there's she says, like, there's a saying of, it's not what happens, but how you think about what happens that causes suffering. And she says, I don't agree with that. I think that there are just some events where pain is unavoidable, and that's just part of the human condition, and it is healthy to suffer in those things, to just let that happen, because that is a very natural, a very human thing to happen, and people can get pretty messed up by not allowing the suffering to go through them, and for them to feel that. It's unfortunately that to live is to suffer, to a certain degree. That is not. So it's that when she says, one life hack to reduce suffering, notice the word reduce in there. So she starts off with, what is cognitive reframing? And cognitive reframing is changing the frame through which we see the world. And what she would say of that is, you're changing the frame through which you see the world, and then you're following through with behavior that reflects that reframing, and that in turn will hopefully help you feel differently, will change the suffering or anxiety that you feel. This very much shows a little triangle here of saying, there's the cognitive thought, there's the feeling, and there's the behavior. Cognitive behavioral therapy isn't so much about changing the feelings directly as it's saying it's far more effective to try and change your thoughts about stuff. With those different thoughts, change your behavior, and that with the feedback between all three of those, that will help will help change your feelings over time. But it's not like, oh, I'm going to stop feeling away. It's like, no, how you feel is how you feel, but how you think, you can reframe stuff, and you can maybe do different behaviors, which will then feed back to, oh, maybe I feel better. Something. She gave the example of a lady who had due to kind of not juggling her finances correctly, had bounced a check. She felt horrible about it. It's just awful. And it's like, well, why do you feel horrible? And sort of the underlining thing there was, I'm a loser. I'm dumb. I messed up and I did it. Therefore I'm dumb, very much going into the catastrophizing and the labeling behavior that Barbara Hffrnn did in another video that I did on her, of unhelpful ways of thinking about your thinking, or patterns of thought, and those definitely being like, I messed up, so therefore I'm a loser, and totalitizing yourself under that label, and there's no getting out from that, versus going, okay, well, how can you rethink, how can you go like, well, that happens, it's a usual thing, no one is going to crush you down. There's also very kind of a hostile thing of, oh my god, the landlord's going to be so upset. The landlord probably deals with tenants all the time. If you just say, I apologize, you pay the $30 that you fine, and you say, I'll get the check to you as quickly as possible, they're not going to care. This is very much all this kind of suffering is coming very much from the woman who she bounced the check, but it's all this is optional pain that she's giving herself, versus going, whoops, okay, and just dealing with the situation and then going on with her life, but not letting it become a suck. And I know I've had things in my life where I've gotten super emotionally, like especially around finances, where I've like, oh, I'm so dumb and all that, and I've felt so horrible about it. I pushed it to one side and just let it stew, not done anything about it. It's actually made the situation worse and worse and worse, because I haven't dealt with it. If I just like, oops, I did that, and then dealt with it immediately, it would have passed right through. That was optional pain on my part. And trying to just reframe how you react to situations. I think she gave another example of, you bang your leg on an open filing cabinet. That initial pain, well, that's unavoidable. That's physical pain. You got whacked, physical thing, like that's unavoidable. But then as soon as you whack, you get angry, and you get angry and you blame yourself, or you start blaming others for it. All that kind of that kind of violence. That's optional pain. That's optional rage, or optional optional beating yourself up for doing something stupid. It's like, well, that happens. That stuff is like, your throbbing leg, maybe it's still throbbing, but all the other kind of stuff that's going on, that again is optional, and that's how you're looking at the situation and how you're doing it. So she goes from, that's what cognitive reframing is trying to kind of switch your thinking on that, and then switching your behavior on that. And she goes to number 2, which is how does framing get formed? And she says a lot of this is like, a lot of the kind of the fundamentals are going to be stuff that's childhood experience, or what we are told as children, being told that you're dumb as a child, what we observed of children, like maybe how your parents interacted with each other, or our personal, and like our personal responses to that, like maybe we're horribly traumatized by something that happened as a kid. And these are the most sticky ones, unsurprisingly. This is when you're forming your beliefs about the world. She had the idea, one that struck home with me is like, you have an alcoholic parent who's maybe unpredictable and violent. You grow up believing that the world is not a safe place. You just fundamentally going into a situation blank, you're just going to assume, oh, I don't know. So you're going to immediately go in the defensive position. That's how you're going to frame stuff. You're going to frame the world that way. That's how you're going to see the world. Whereas maybe, you grew up in a world where, your parents provided you a very kind of loving, stable environment, and you're going to have a lot more, oh, I'm loved, and the world is manageable, and whatever comes, I will manage it. And it's the same world, but it's just how you're looking out at it. So you can see that, I can see that these are, this is a 14-minute long video. It's not going to give you all the keys to the kingdom, as it was, but it gives you kind of a starting place of like, oh, how am I framing stuff? Like, why am I having this reaction right now? What is the underlying assumptions I am making about the world that cause me to kind of go to this spot? And, maybe what triggers you in particular in different situations. If I relate it to social media, there's a lot of stuff of like, I assume that I am dumb. I assume that people aren't going to like me. I'm going to catastrophize. I am going to label myself as dumb or unlikable or a freak or a weirdo. if I'm, that's my assumptions going into it. So it's not surprising that I thus find something like social media, which can be nasty at times, but at other times you can find perfectly delightful people who aren't there to jump all over you, and to also maybe arm yourself with I should expect a certain level of civility, and if I don't get it here, well, internet's a big place and I can go somewhere else and find better stuff. Or, oh, this person is being harassing and things, so block. And there's a whole bunch of other people that you don't block that are really interesting and fun to talk to. So that's definitely stuff that I can apply to social media anxiety, and I can also apply it in my usual world, like yeah. So that is kind of the core of the cognitive reframing. She brings in the life hack thing is a thing on Buddhist teaching called the second arrow of suffering, and this actually really lines up very well with cognitive behavioral therapy, because the first arrow is pain that cannot be avoided. That is bashing your leg on a filing cabinet. That is you lose a partner in a car accident. There is a pain, there's a suffering there that is normal, that is unavoidable. If someone that you love dearly died tomorrow, there would be pain, and that would be completely unavoidable pain. And if it was avoidable, you'd be goddamn robot or something if you could turn that off, or you'd probably would be well away from the norm of regular human beings of like experiencing loss. If you experience loss, there's going to be suffering, and it is unavoidable. We have people we love in our lives. Nobody's going to make it out of here alive, kind of that idea. So but the thing for a Buddhist thought is that there's the second arrow is the optional or the avoidable pain. And the example of the banging the leg, that is very much, getting angry, blaming yourself, blaming others for it, or getting into a big rage over something, which you no longer is it just the pain to your leg. That is optional pain. That is what you're bringing into that situation. You can bang your leg and it's like, ow, that hurt. Oh, maybe I should solve this. Try and, push it in. Maybe if somebody else did leave it open, you can ask them, please to shut it. But it doesn't have to become something that kind of consumes you. In the example of losing someone in a car accident, Brbr shares a story of how yes, that person experienced unavoidable pain, unavoidable suffering in that situation, unavoidable sorrow. But he also started going into a whole thing of like, oh, she went out for groceries, I should have gone out for groceries, or oh, I should have stopped her from doing this. All this stuff that kind of goes around to he was kind of blaming himself for a car accident, which he didn't have any control over. But he decided part of him was like a way of dealing with it was blaming yourself for it. I guess it makes it more controllable in a way, but it also is turning a whole bunch of suffering on yourself that you don't need. The other thing, another underlying thing there was he felt like, oh, I'm grieving for too long. I'm crying all the time, and that's not a manly thing to do. Very much kind of the idea of a guy, maybe have a couple of tears, but then you're done. It's like, the belief in our culture where men aren't allowed to feel things as deeply or as expressively, openly as women are in our society. And that being another thing of like, if you're beating yourself up over that is optional. That is avoidable pain. That is not that, just because, you should be allowed to have your full range of emotions for however long it takes you to process that unavoidable sorrow over losing your wife or something like that. So yeah, it's definitely interesting where you get something where cognitive behavioral therapy, there does seem to be a lot of ways where it does overlap with Buddhist thinking, at least Western ideas of Buddhist thinking. I think Buddhists, but it's another way of saying it's like, yeah, that first arrow, that's unavoidable. It's unavoidable that one's going to hit, but the second one, that's sort of you. That can be you doing it. And it being saying, like, it's important to recognize, being able to recognize when something is, when something is unavoidable pain, like losing someone, like, just physical injury, where there's unavoidable, like, being, maybe hurt, like someone dumps you, maybe that would be, that's like, of course you're going to feel hurt, but there's the being dumped, and it's like, oh, anybody who's like gets rejected for whatever reason, that's quite reasonable. What's the optional thing is when you say they dumped me because I'm fundamentally unlovable, I'm a loser, um, putting using all these things to just, and not like a thoughtful, like, well, maybe I wasn't a good partner in this situation, and what are the things I can do to be a better partner in the future, but to just go, nope, I'm unlovable entirely. That's it. I'm done with. It's like that's the optional pain. And it's unhelpful pain, and it's something that will leave you locked in suffering, versus saying, okay, it hurts to get rejected, but oh, I could maybe learn from the situation. I can process the pain that I felt, but I can also move on and learn, and continue on with my life, and hopefully do better in the future. If indeed it is you, it may have just been like getting dumped. It's like, oh, okay, maybe there's just some way that I wasn't compatible with that person, and it might be worth it to go, okay, how were we not compatible? And then if you have other people in your life going forward, you can have maybe a slightly clearer view of, oh, how do you, whatever the incompatibility was the last partner, try not to repeat that with your next partner as it was, or get it out in the open earlier, so that you're not deep in before that this issue comes to light. I don't know why I'm using this as an example. I'm in a loving relationship and have been for a long time, so it's probably easy because it's very abstract to me that I can start yakking about that. All right, that is, my cognitive behavioral therapy social media anxiety study video, cognitive reframing and one life hack to reduce suffering, by Brbr Hffrnn, a psychotherapist. I've been Jay. More videos later.